Right, so we're live, are we? Are you comfortable there, Marty? You don't need a smaller chair there, just to make you fit in there.
Your legs aren't cold with the air conditioning on and those shorts?
Yes. I suppose we'll kick into it. So good evening, everyone. I've got Marty here, Martyn Taylor, who's our Chief Growth Officer. And Marty's just back from Colombia, where we have an office. And so I thought, I'm going to grab Marty. We're going to have a coffee. We've had a Vietnamese coffee again today, and it's starting to buzz in my head, but I think I'll remember what we were going to talk about. But so Marty's just back from Colombia, and
that's right.
Yeah. Maybe before we go into the questions, maybe just tell me about Colombia and how we ended up there, and what your role is, and how you find it.
Sure. Well, if you remember, the original reason we started looking at Central and South America is after one of our fintech clients was looking to do some customer service there. And with them, we do some anti-money laundering and compliance work, but they were looking specifically for customer support, which is not something we normally do. But they had inquired if we don't do something like that, do we have any partners down there? And at the same time, we had been formulating a strategy to increase our market share in the United States, and nearshoring had been a subject that had come up several times. So with a little bit of impetus from a client that was looking for some potential work there and partners, I started investigating it more. We worked with some of our online job search firms like Indeed, which provided a lot of data, market data regarding salaries. I got additional information on the numbers of universities, number of accounting graduates, finance graduates, and from there we kind of narrowed it down. I think it was probably 6 months after we had those initial discussions that I went down there for a soft landing sort of preview with some of the local government agencies. One of them being Invest in Bogota, and they did a lot.
Really helpful, weren't they?
Yeah. They
Actually,
did a lot.
I'm going to take you back a step, and you talked about nearshoring, and that's a common word now, and maybe people don't understand what that is. But what does nearshoring mean for you? To explain that.
So nearshoring is basically working with an offshoring partner that's time zone aligned.
Right.
So specifically, as we're talking about the U.S. market, the majority of accounting firms work with companies in India or also with companies like us in the Philippines.
And there's always a time zone type issue. So what is the time zone in Colombia?
The time zone in Colombia is either aligned with Central Standard Time or Eastern Standard Time, depending on daylight savings in the United States.
So it is right down the middle, effectively.
Yeah, so it's perfect.
And how far is it to get there from the States if you're flying in?
If you're flying directly from, say, Atlanta, it's about 4 hours and change. It's a little bit closer from Miami.
Miami's good.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why Colombia was also appealing versus, there's some good accounting, graduates from Argentina and Chile, but Colombia is just a lot more accessible.
How'd you find, it's always a question, the English, the skills in English compared to, say, here in the Philippines or India? What's the quality like of English?
Well, the quality is not the same as it is in the Philippines, which has roughly a 95% fluency rate, right? But as far as
in the Philippines, it's taught at school, isn't it? You just brought up with English,
right?
Yeah, it's not the same in Colombia.
In Colombia, though, the majority of the universities require a B2 English level for graduation.
What does that mean? Yeah,
B2, there's A2 is the highest, then there's A1, then there's B2, B1, and B2 is basically, I think, a high intermediate English speaker.
Yeah.
So that's the requirement, is to have that when you graduate. Yeah.
Right.
So, I would say if you're looking for more experienced hires, that have 10 to 15 years plus experience, there's a much smaller pool of English-speaking candidates. But for the roles that we're mostly filling,
Well, we're
English.
accountants, we're numbers.
Yeah, so those roles haven't been hard to find. Now on the ground, running around town, it's a little, there's not as much
get
English.
in a cab. I've been there. I know that because you speak
Yeah.
Spanish, which helps.
My Spanish is
is it passable?
Passable for sure.
Yeah, whereas
I'm probably a B2.
Yeah.
In Spanish. So
whereas
you've heard me as a B2, and I can find my way around.
Yeah, I'm on Duolingo, and I don't know what I'd be, but I'm probably mid. I'll be an E or a K. I'm not that good. I get by though. Yeah. So tell me a bit more. Colombia, the lifestyle. We're our office. We're based in Bogota. How do you find that and compare that to other cities in the world?
Bogota is a large international city. It's the population's roughly 8 million people, so it's a big cosmopolitan city. One of the unique traits about it is it's one of the highest capital cities in the world.
Very high.
It's not the highest, but it's close to 9,000 feet. So in meters, it's about 2,600 meters in elevation. So it's chilly. Though relatively close to the equator, you would still find that the average temperature is in Celsius, roughly 15 degrees, plus or minus 5 degrees. But it's a big international city. There's
How do you
great
find
cuisine.
the likes of the infrastructure, the technology?
The infrastructure is decent. They're doing a lot of infrastructure projects now related to this busing system called the Transmilenio.
I know it's quite a busy place with traffic.
It is. It does suffer at rush hours like most other major cities.
Yeah. But good airport in and out.
Yeah.
And
easy to get around in.
Good power. Like we always have issues here in the Philippines with power, but I think the power would probably be more stable
in my experience, it's definitely been more stable.
And the internet quality is good too.
Internet's good.
Yeah.
There is an occasional earthquake, but it's very infrequent. I just happened to be there during one of them.
You were telling me.
Yeah. Which was it was a little nerve-wracking. Not the first one I've been in, but definitely one of the higher ones I've been in a building.
Well, I'm used to earthquakes from New Zealand, so we know about that. So
that's right.
And the Philippines, we've been
right next to this office when we've had some strong ones.
So how do you find the talent pool? Like we hire a lot of accountants. We've been hiring some data analytical type people, bookkeeping. How do you find it there for talent?
I'm glad you mentioned that, the data analytics, because as far as the accounting programs go, they're very strong. There's been a big push in the last several years to focus a lot more on the International Financial Reporting Standards, IFRS. There's also, I'll have to double check the name of it, but there's a certifying board as well, which does all the certifications, including the CPA exams. There's specialization in accounting, but within the bachelor's, I'm gonna have to.
What do you call that? Yeah, I know your Bachelor of Commerce or
it's like a Bachelor of Arts.
Right.
Within a Bachelor of Arts, you can be finance based, of which you studied accounting, but there's also specialization in accounting. And what I would say is that in terms of are
they more rounded, do you think, the degrees?
It's more inclusive, I would say. It's not as much of a specialization. So I think
whereas an accounting degree in the Philippines is, there is a little bit of at the start and then it gets quite narrow at the end with the accounting.
It can be very specialized, right? There's even 5-year accounting degrees, which, I think for people not familiar with the market, it's like, is there enough accounting I can study in 5 years?
Jeez, I did it in 3.
But I think that you find a bit broader curriculum in terms of corporate finance, microeconomics. I think the overall sort of finance backgrounds, not accounting specific.
Well, just what
stronger.
I've noticed is as well with Juan, who heads it up there, the very intellectual politics and
Yeah,
there's a lot of discussions about macroeconomics around the world, and yeah, they're very worldly.
they
Yeah,
do have a very global understanding, and they seem to be very up with current events.
yeah,
I think the critical thinking skills are very strong.
yeah.
Right? You've met
Oh,
our first several
yeah,
hires, and
yeah,
they're all very sharp, witty. But yeah, the critical thinking is something that is hard to find, and it's hard to teach.
yeah. It
I
is.
think that's something that's
It stood
evolves
out
a
for
little.
me
Yeah,
from what.
it's kind of a cultural thing, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it is. And how do you find it from the talents there? But how do you find the culture, and the, I suppose, getting that work done? What's the attitudes like there compared to other places?
It's good. I think in terms of cultural alignment, there's the sort of standard, and I believe it's the same in New Zealand. You grow up with that work ethic that's work
Mm,
hard,
yeah,
go to school, you find success.
yeah,
And how I would say that differs now from the United States is, there's, I think, a shift in terms of what is the value of an undergraduate degree in the United States now. Part of that has to do
yeah,
with cost because it's so expensive. Students are in debt for several years, whereas, of course, in Colombia, you don't have the same cost that you would have in the United States. But the
yeah,
mentality of do well in school, work hard, and you'll find success is still the mantra that you find there generally.
yeah,
There's not so much of a gig economy, sort of like I want to jump from project to project
yeah.
and kind of be my own entrepreneur. Though entrepreneurship and
Mm,
IT focus is very strong, but I think there's still more of a, I would say, traditional job path that people
yeah,
look to follow, and the same sort of corporate values you would find, in Western first world countries are there in terms of punctuality,
oh yeah,
understanding the hierarchy of the business they're working
yeah,
within, completing their tasks on time. There's nothing like quiet quitting, that I think we had in
yeah,
during COVID, where people just decided to, I'm not going
yeah,
to show up today.
yeah,
You,
yeah.
you you don't have that sort of attitude that I've seen at all.
Yeah,
So
and they still have that, which is across the globe. We're seeing it here with people wanting to work from home compared to an office environment. There is that sort of
you do
split.
have that.
Yeah,
Yeah, you have that. I think that's pretty much a global trend.
it
And,
is.
and like
Yeah,
most, you know, we're working with several, you touched on universities earlier, and
yeah,
we'll dive into that a little bit deeper. But just like in the Philippines, I think when you have recent grads,
yeah,
they're obviously more prone to want to work in an office. And especially, in our cases, when
yeah,
we have training programs, we may require them, in
yeah,
fact, to be there. But if you're talking about people that have, say more than 5 years
yeah.
seniority, depending on where they're located, it's harder to get them into the office, just like
Yeah,
anywhere, really.
it is. But you've had a lot to do with, actually, you're talking universities. You've had quite a bit to do with the universities there in Colombia, and we're running, our internship program as well, which is actually in the university. So,
That's right. Yeah.
how do you see that compared to other places, the universities, and how does that look and feel?
Well, I would say because the BPO, the business process
Mm.
outsourcing industry in Colombia, is more nascent.
It's
You
just
know,
early days,
yeah,
isn't
it's
it?
still pretty early on that universities and their placement offices have all been very eager to talk to us.
Yeah,
And again, some of the soft landing government organizations that they have there have been the ones to tie us in to the proper contacts at the university, which, as I said, are usually the placement officers or specifically the accounting
yeah.
uh, department
Because
directors.
normally an
Uh,
accountant in Colombia, say, if we pick on that, would work for a big four, or maybe they would work for a telecom or a big bank in Colombia. There's not
yeah,
too many options for those top grads.
Right. Yeah, I would say that the big four are, sort of the top of the,
Yeah.
top of the tower, the thing that, the best performers are looking to do. And then, yes, correct. Next is sort of like large industry,
Yeah.
oil, gas, telecommunications, banking. And, you know, I think
Yeah.
most of the grads are very eager to try to have an international experience.
Yeah.
They understand that.
Like that US tax program we ran, I think that was proven very popular
Yeah, that's
because,
right.
yeah.
So, I can't remember where we were with the universities, but
Yeah.
yeah, there's not a lot of BPOs that are there,
Yeah.
so
There's a
it's
lot
easy
of
to.
call centers was what I saw.
Most of it's call
Call
centers,
centers and service centers, the
right?
Amazons, those big ones. There's,
And
yeah.
most of that has been for the Spanish speaking
Yes.
capacity. I mean,
Right.
there of course there's the labor costs, the ease of doing business, setting up a business,
Yeah.
the government tax incentives, but it was the Spanish speaking capabilities that
Yeah.
really what grew the market. Same as the Philippines, right?
Yeah.
It was voice, and then over time you start increasing in the
Yeah. The
in the
BPOs and the knowledge
transitioning
base,
to
the
knowledge
offshoring.
processed outsourcing, KPOs, which
Yeah.
is where we fall.
Where we fall. Yeah.
So, in terms of the number, just the overall number of accounting graduates, there's still going to be more in India and the Philippines, but these are relatively saturated markets.
Yeah.
There's a lot of competition. In Colombia, there's much less so.
Yeah.
We've had very few encounters, or through all of the different organizations that we've dealt with, there aren't many companies that really specialize in accounting,
Yeah.
finance work like we
We're
do.
pretty early days.
So,
There's not much in the way of competition there yet.
right.
Yeah.
So we're really trying to brand ourselves with the local universities there,
Yeah.
in terms of being like
It gives them some
the
options.
yeah,
Yeah.
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 It's another option besides the big four, and I think just like students everywhere, people crave
Yeah.
international opportunities, right? And as you know from any of the nearshore locations that we deal with, specifically in say Asia, where we
Yeah.
have big teams in the Philippines and in Australia, New
Yeah.
Zealand, those team members have a lot of opportunities to travel to New Zealand and work there for 2 weeks and
Yeah.
have training opportunities, et cetera. So,
Yeah.
we know that's a big draw for Colombians as well, working with a U.S. client base.
Yeah. How do you find like the salaries and wages compared to, let's compare it to here in the Philippines or India?
It's comparable. It's
Yeah.
we've talked about some of the differences in terms of the way the wages are handled there. In your normal
Yeah.
payroll, it includes a lot of funds that go towards, let's say,
It is
severance.
complicated. Yeah.
Although it's much easier at the
Is
point
it?
of when an employee is
Right.
redundated or terminated. There's not a large closeout process in terms of, okay, how much leave did they accrue that they
Right.
haven't used? Is there a severance payment related? What are the tax implications?
Yeah.
There, you're prepaying everything. So when someone leaves, the slate is basically
Right.
wiped
And
clean.
they have good labour laws, don't they? Similar to what we have here in Philippines.
Yeah, it's still very employee friendly.
Yeah.
I would say the only thing that on paper looks like it might be a bit different is the overtime regulations.
Yeah.
If you know that you are going to require someone to work beyond the legal limit of hours, and this is on a regular basis, then you need to provide notification to the Department of Labor, just letting them know that, for whatever it is, seasonal production or something, that, there might be several hours where the employees are having to work 50 hours or
Right.
something.
Oh,
I don't see that affecting us much, perhaps with some of our tax clients, but
it may be.
yeah.
But back to the salary. So you're saying they're comparable to what we've got here, but maybe at the top end, like the experienced ones, may be a lot higher.
Yeah.
towards that 5-6 years plus experience?
Yeah, I would say most roles, 3, maybe 5, 0 to 5 years of experience, pretty comparable.
Yeah.
Once you start going over that 5 and then into the 10 range, mostly because
Yeah.
of the English proficiency,
Yeah.
you start to get some bigger gaps, 10, 15, 25% in some cases.
Yeah.
And if you're needing them to have had specific US experience with
Yeah.
GAAP, generally accepted accounting principles, tax
But when you
experience,
compare it
etc.,
to a salary in the US, it's still what, a
it's
third?
it's still, yeah, it's still, you know, at the lowest levels 50%, but you
Yeah.
know, as high as 65%
Yeah.
less expensive.
So it's
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
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 And another thing, you know, that we found in terms of our competition, you know, I think I was reading the other day that, you know, in India, for example, the labor increases have been growing at 10% for the last several years.
Yeah.
We talk to a lot of firms that are working with India. One of the common complaints they have is turnover, right? And turnovers often generated because of people trying to align their hours, right? So if you're in the India, or you know, in some cases the Philippines, if you're working night shift, people don't want to do that as long. You know, I always joke that, what does a night shift person do in the day? They look for a day shift job.
Right.
So, you know, going back to India, one of the common complaints is that, yeah, there's not the continuity, right?
Yeah.
If you don't have that employee working for you for a certain period of time, you lose the advantage of that learning curve, which can sometimes be flat. So the learning curve goes down, the quality control, you know, the quality just doesn't improve. You should be getting more efficient and fewer errors as you progress. And there's a lot of turnover in India. And again, there's been, you know, this is from what clients have told us on sales related calls, is that there have been continual increases. Whereas I know with the back room, I've been here 3 years now, we've had one increase to our fees.
Yeah. Yeah.
Of course, the labor rates may change, but in terms of, you know, our fees specifically, it's pretty standard that it doesn't change unless there's a major shift in the market.
One of the other things that we can talk, the nearshoring, the beauty of nearshoring is that you have that ability to fly down to Colombia, down to Bogota, or fly your team up to the US for training, and that's a benefit.
Yeah, those are those are certainly major benefits, but I think that the number one thing is the real-time collaboration.
Yeah.
Right. Whenever you need someone, they're going to be available. You know, we do have a lot of staff that are in the Philippines that are still working with U.S. firms. You know, you can definitely learn to make it work. You know, you have, you know, sometimes.
But we always say that, isn't it? Spend time if you can with your team is really.
It's certainly an advantage.
It builds a
right?
bond, and it builds a bit of culture, and
Yes.
it really helps. And from one of the fears of Colombia, you know, it's been through some dark times. You know, it's post Pablo Escobar and all those things that went on. How do you find it from a safe and secure point of view, just walking around?
Well, you know, we have an office in Davao in the Philippines, which also had a little bit of a reputation for being unsafe for foreigners.
Yeah.
Right. Because of one of the, you know, I won't name the name, but, you know, there was a recognized terrorist organization there. So one of the reasons that we decided to go there is because a lot of the larger, you know, publicly traded BPO firms weren't setting up shop there, which gave us better access to a larger talent pool. Right. And Colombians certainly, well, Colombia is not like that anymore.
Yeah.
That you know, that
I think
more or less
really want to
in the
move.
90s.
The government's very pro.
Yeah, very, very pro
business
and in
IT,
fact,
would you say technology?
Yeah, lots of investment in that. In fact, I think it was 2 years ago that Medellin was actually voted as, or ranked as, the second or the number one digital nomad location.
Yes, there is a lot
so
of
you know, I mean,
a lot
that
of
even
people there.
speaks to the
Yeah,
safety of it. When most people that have
yeah.
a backpack and have
But I
jobs to
think
do, they
it's
go there.
like any place. From what the number of times I've been there, like I'd feel uncomfortable in New Zealand and in Auckland and some places. I would
Yeah,
not go there. And whereas in Colombia, especially Medellin, I felt like really,
yeah, completely safe.
yeah,
You know, as long as you're in the, you know, as long as you're not off the beaten track,
yeah.
there's a lot of safety there. And
And Bogota
you
is
know,
just a big place, so it's
and
very
and there's
cosmopolitan.
yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, you know, you have your pickpockets and some things like that, but
yeah,
the level of violent crime is still relatively low, especially against tourists. You
yeah,
know,
yeah,
so I don't have any issues with the safety there. You've
yeah.
been there. You stand out a little more than I do, maybe a little taller, but
Yeah,
you know, I think that gringos, you know, there's lots of them around, and I
yeah.
think everybody thinks it's safe. We've had clients that have,
Yep.
you know, spent numerous days there. No one's had a, you know, knock on wood, none of us have had any sort of issue related to safety.
Yeah. No,
So,
and the quality of the hotels and accommodation, and it's
oh,
great.
it's great. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean,
Food is amazing.
so
Oh,
good, very
yeah.
affordable, right? You can have a full meal with a beer or a drink, and it's still, you know, I'd say $10 to $12
Yeah.
is a fair price.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the accommodations, you mentioned hotels, of which there are many,
Yeah.
but there are also a lot of residential buildings that are focused on the digital
Oh,
nomad
yeah.
market, right?
Airbnb type.
So
Yeah.
you remember we were in one. It had a golf simulator room. It had a yoga room. It had a TRX, which are the
Yeah.
straps room. It had an indoor swimming pool,
Yeah.
which we didn't do because we had to wear a hairnet. We didn't have a
Yes.
hairnet.
That's right.
Um, uh,
Yeah.
it had a food court
That's
downstairs that
right.
had like 20 different restaurants, and this is all within the facility
The complex.
of one building. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's very good security as well in all the newer residential buildings. So
Yeah.
I think it's very business friendly. I would have no qualms if any of our staff from the Philippines or from the United
Yeah.
States spend time down there for training opportunities,
Yeah.
etc. I think it's wonderful.
Yeah.
I've only been gone a few weeks, I mean,
Are
a
you
month
missing
now,
it?
but I do miss it. Yeah, I think of it very fondly, and it's becoming second home to me.
I think you've got a fond love of Medellin, haven't you? I can never say that right.
Medellin is
Yeah.
is the local
Like,
pronunciation. Yeah, it's the they call it the city of eternal spring because of the weather,
oh,
and
it's a beautiful place.
it's perfect. You know?
Yeah.
I always describe it as in the evenings you debate whether you should wear a light jacket or not.
Yeah.
But in terms of temperature, right, it's usually between 17 to
Yeah.
25 degrees, something like that. It's
Yeah.
always very
And
pleasant.
it's great too. Like if you do want to get on the coast, it's like an hour flight down to, we've been to Cartagena.
Yeah,
And that's
up to Cartagena.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
up
a
to Cartagena.
magnificent
Yeah.
place as well. And it's a
Yeah.
lot hotter. You're on the
Much
the
warmer. Yeah,
Caribbean.
the difference of the elevation. So even in Medellin, and I could be wrong, but I think it's probably around 6,000 feet, 6,000 plus
it's high.
feet,
Yeah.
2,000 plus meters, something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
But really a beautiful place nestled in a valley, and
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh well, maybe that would be a good note to leave on. And
Yeah.
we've talking about making me want to go back, but
And great coffee too, right?
well, that's the other great thing. Yes, we love our coffee.
Yeah.
we
So
bought some back.
I know
last
Wayne
time.
loves his coffee, and in fact, you know, it may be in the dark recesses of the internet, but there's a photo floating out there of you and I on a coffee picking tour.
That's all right.
With our little traditional sort of sarape. I don't know what it's called in Colombia, but it's, you know, like the Mexican sarape that you know, we'll dig up for some of the staff here later.
Yeah, we'll look that out. All right. Oh well, thanks, Marty. That was
My
good.
pleasure. Yeah,
I think we covered quite a bit there. So yeah,
looking forward to the next coffee you make me.
Yeah.
So,
all right. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.